is Mr. Vaibhav Tewari, the Vice President and Business Head Cloud Services at Microland. As Vice President and Business Head of Cloud Services at Microland, Vaibhav is responsible for building the cloud business for the company. As a seasoned professional with vast experience in building businesses, he has successfully built and run SaaS business in the past, including mortgage processing as a service and supply chain management as a service. He holds an MBA degree from IIM Calcutta and a BTech degree from IIT Kanpur. The topic that he would be covering today is hybrid cloud infrastructure management, the new IT delivery paradigm. Vaibhav, I request you to come and take over.
Thank you, and a warm welcome to all of you for an exciting session on hybrid cloud management. Since morning, of course, you have heard about everything on cloud. So people have discussed about public cloud, private cloud, what workloads, and so on and so forth. And once you have set up everything as everybody talked about, then how do you manage that is the topic which I am looking at covering. So what is hybrid cloud actually? Okay, and different people have different opinions on hybrid cloud. And many of my non-techie friends always ask me, so what is cloud? Because everybody keeps talking about cloud all the time, and they ask, so what is cloud? And whenever they say, I will always look up skywards and say, that's where the cloud is. And so I look for a picture which will depict hybrid cloud from a layman's language. And that's how hybrid cloud looks. There are clouds with no water, clouds with some water, and clouds with a lot of water actually. This clouds with a lot of water is what we are waiting for actually to happen in Bangalore for a long time. It's not happening. I hope Cloud Connect has happened. It will happen now. So as layman's language, what is hybrid cloud? What is in hybrid cloud in reality actually? What you are looking at doing, you are orchestrating a IT hybrid cloud environment, and what you are doing, you are creating a symphony between applications, data, enterprise services, and enterprise consumers. Okay, and that's the important part. Enterprise consumers is an important point to note actually, because IT as a service is basically making, basically it's consumerizing the whole IT, including enterprise IT. So our enterprise consumers could consume any of the IT services from anywhere. So they could consume it from anywhere, and services could be delivered from anywhere. And that's the whole idea behind creating a successful or well-orchestrated hybrid cloud environment. This is how it looks. So you have public cloud, basically applications like Google Apps and Office 365. You have public cloud providers, infrastructure providers like Amazon Web Services and Rackspace and so on and so forth. You could have enterprises having their own private cloud within their premises, okay, which they could be setting up as they need. Of course, they could also retain some of the basically traditional infrastructure, traditional applications could be on their physical infrastructure. And that's how this whole hybrid cloud environment looks. There's another small picture which you see at the bottom is about mobile devices. Of course, that picture, if you look 1 year from now, will look very different because most of the picture will be, most space will be taken by the mobile devices. The tsunami of mobile devices, consumer mobile devices which we are seeing, and all the concepts like BYOD and all will probably make sure that this part in the cloud becomes much bigger. How you do that? Basically, you look for a cloud security. You have a cloud service delivery fabric which you build as you start. Of course, you architect it for availability, which is a very important point, and management of cloud and hybrid systems. That's the topic of today's discussion. So that's how the hybrid cloud environment looks. That's how you create it. Depending on what stage of evolution you are as an organization, you could have different components in this actually. Okay. So just to give you a suggested workloads, actually what could go where, basically from a public cloud, private cloud, outsource, and traditional in-house IT, this is how it could look. So private cloud could be more like business critical databases, networks, tools, asset management. The traditional in-house IT could be data analytics, business intelligence, ERP, IT security monitoring and management, business critical ERPs. You could host your email, web applications, storage, backup, and so on and so forth on public cloud. And of course, you look at outsourcing and monitoring, call triage, email management, network management, web infrastructure management, and so on and so forth. So that is something, this is a suggested workload allocation. As you're building a hybrid cloud, you could look at allocating these workloads in different cloud components actually. So what you're looking at doing with hybrid cloud, what is your net of a hybrid cloud? Your objective is you want to provide IT as a service to the users, that basically your enterprise users. Those could be within your premises, could be mobile users. Okay, the service has to be at a superior level of availability, performance, and end user experience. That again is a very important point, and we'll talk a little bit more about end user experience as we go along, because IT as a service, the end user experience becomes the most important point. environment is very complex from a hybrid cloud infrastructure perspective. It basically comprises of physical, virtual, and cloud resources. Another complexity is the resources could be from any of the providers, and that adds to the complexity. What are the critical success factors? What you are looking at doing finally? You want to achieve the federation of data and resources between internal data centers, different public cloud providers, your private cloud, with no disruption in end user service and experience. And that's what you're looking at doing. So that's a nutshell of how you build a hybrid cloud, what you want to achieve with that. So moving one step back, so one most important change which has happened basically from a traditional, the way you have been managing a traditional IT infrastructure and the way you manage a hybrid infrastructure with cloud coming into play, the biggest philosophical change is that you have been basically running technology infrastructure so far. Okay, that has been the focus so far. It will start changing to running IT infrastructure management as a business for yourself, and that's where the big difference lies. So you have been basically focused on systems so far. You will be focusing on services going forward actually, because end of the day, all this is being offered to your end user as a service actually. So that's the biggest change. The focus will change from technology. It was 100% technology focus. It will start probably becoming more 50% technology, 50% management, 50% business actually. And everything which we do, which I discuss from here on, we should see in that background that everything has to be done in hybrid cloud infrastructure management when you are offering IT as a service with the end user in mind, with the business user in mind actually. And that's the biggest philosophical change, and that's what is changing everything from an infrastructure management perspective as well. And what components and changes, I will cover it in some detail. So if you look at it in any organization, the three key elements which are there, there's people, process, and technology, and all three will start changing with the hybrid cloud coming into play, and how they change, we'll talk about it a little bit. So starting with people, so what is changing actually? So earlier you were having silo-based management. So you had towers within an organization which you are managing. It could be network, it could be data centers, it could be end user, and so on and so forth. Now you're moving from silo-based management to service management. So all you are saying is that how my end user is getting serviced. I'll give you an example. The way computing power is going to be working will work no different than the way your landline works, the way your cell phone works. So if your cell phone is not working, if the connection is down for some reason, you won't call up your service provider and ask what is happening on trunks, what's happening on switches. You don't care about that. All that you ask is how long it will take before it comes up. And that's how computing power will be going forward, and that's the whole idea of cloud. So you could self-serve it, and you only look at service management for an end user, and that's how it will start becoming. The boundaries between system admin and network admin will start getting blurred. And from a manpower perspective, the breadth in the skill is the key actually. So you cannot be very, very niche technology focused. That's something which will start changing as we go along. Focus will shift from managing data centers to managing end user experience. Gradual shift from primarily technical skills to a combination of technology and management skills, because end of the day, you are interacting with external world as far as cloud is concerned. You're interacting with a lot more businesses than what you have ever done. And as a service provider within your organization, you are managing a business for yourself, including, when we'll talk a little bit more about it with the financial management and capacity management and so on and so forth, it becomes business management. So it starts moving from technology, pure technology, to basically a business management thing, and that's why those skills become very, very important. Another important point, and I think one of the speakers covered it in the morning, that automation, scalability, and flexibility of what cloud offers will reduce the manpower requirement actually. So what do you do with the people who are lesser number of people? I mean, companies like Amazon are managing much larger infrastructure with much lesser number of people actually. So the ratio of people required for managing infrastructure is coming down. So what do you do with them, those people? So one, of course, we have to start focusing on how we reskill them. They could focus on strategic aspects to enhance IT service delivery, because that's something which will become very important. The way you face your customers, the way you face your internal consumers becomes very, very important. Many of day-to-day tasks are getting basically are going to be provisioned. The self-service will become very, very important. So you have to make sure that a number of people will start coming down, okay, and you have to reskill the people whom you are having, and that's the most important point from people perspective. Moving to processes, basically a lot of changes happen in this space, and why it happens? If you see, most of the IT infrastructure management processes have been built around ITIL. So that has been the backbone of the infrastructure management, and the framework was written basically with in-house infrastructure. The framework was not written so much with multiple providers working along with you for all your critical applications and critical data. So that's the biggest change which ITIL will see from a process perspective. So what are the changes? Again, going back to the point of how business becomes very, very important. So from ITIL perspective, the whole framework is written with availability, security, continuity in mind. Okay, so you have to ensure availability, security, and continuity, and other operational parameters. What it starts changing, that you have to start focusing more on parameters which are top of the mind for your business users. That's the most important point. So what are those parameters? Those will be financial management, those could be capacity management, those could be vendor management, and so on and so forth. So if we see also the key areas, so you see service strategy. So how the enterprise services are being delivered will start changing, because you could offer an application from public cloud, you could offer it from private cloud, you could do cloud busting, it will also start getting offered from public cloud, and so on and so forth. And that's how the way you decide a service strategy will start changing. Financial management is lot more critical. Whether you are charging your internal employees or not, or internal units or not, financial management becomes very important, because now you are giving computing power to them on a pay-per-use basis. So you have to create budgets for them, they have to start using those budgets, they should not overshoot, and so on and so forth. So everybody has capacity which they have to manage. It's no different than your cell phone plans. So your cell phone plans, you know that if you spend 1,000 rupees, you'll get X number of calls, and so on and so forth, or Y number of SMSs. Same thing will happen for computing power actually. And that's why financial management becomes very important. Service design, the supplier management will have lot more rigor actually from the hybrid cloud perspective. So you have this all public cloud providers actually. You have to make sure that you are disciplined to monitor what they are doing. So basically monitoring your application performance, monitoring your overall infrastructure performance, including public cloud providers. And that's something vendor becomes, supplier management becomes very, very important. Capacity, of course, is very important, related and linked to financial management. It has to be elastic, shared, cross-domain, and workloads are mobile. Cloud busting is something which will become reality in next couple of years actually, and companies will start leveraging public cloud, private cloud as a needed basis. So there again, capacity management becomes very important. Service transition, again taking into account the external basically cloud providers, their change and release management becomes very important, because there again you have to have a lot of coordination with your suppliers, with the especially public cloud providers who are outside your premises actually. Okay, so all the successful changes in release will have to be done with minimum disruption, and it could, the whole idea is, just visualize it, that your workload could be mobile. It will be moving from basically provider to provider, or from private cloud to public cloud. That's where again service transition becomes very, very important. Configuration management, again automation is the most critical part in that. So not only you have automation in provisioning, you also should have automation for all the processes pre-provisioning as well as post-provisioning. So that's something which is very important. Environment changes at a very rapid pace. Basically all your virtual machines could be created, could be destroyed in like 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes actually. So for example, a vMotion could trigger multiple configuration changes in 1 minute. Okay, so how do you do the configuration management? Automation becomes very important from that perspective. Service operation, again access management, incident management, problem management, and some of those things are also important, but they're important from an end user perspective. They're not necessarily important from that cannot be the sole focus of infrastructure management personnel actually. It has to be one part of your overall focus, that to be the end user experience in mind. Of course, continual service improvements, communication of KPIs, SLA, change request with external vendors is very critical. You also have to make sure that they are working on your SLAs. You have a proper mechanism and discipline to review that actually, and monitor whether SLAs are being met or not. Today the way the system is, it's not that a lot of public cloud providers are open to that, but that's how it will be actually. As this whole ecosystem becomes more and more mature, providers will have to look at giving the SLAs as required by the businesses. So that's basically from an ITIL and process perspective. I also wanted to cover one more important point with this, which will be basically around governance actually. Okay, governance could be covered with security, also could be part of technology, and as well as part of process. So I'm covering it in this because you have to really create very strong processes to make sure the governance is taken care of in the hybrid cloud environment. So different matter, the governance is needed more on earth than on the cloud actually. And especially if we see our own country, governance is a very important thing which we are missing in big time. But I think that's a different topic and we should take it up some other time. We'll only talk about governance in cloud right now. So what do you do in governance? What are the key considerations? The key considerations will be around access control. Okay, so what you have to do, basically all the teams who are basically accessing any resource, that has to be basically limited. That has to be based on roles, that has to be based on on their specific areas, specific levels of access. For different teams, you have to create that, something very important. You also can look at integrating your basically Active Directory deployment to extend the internal policies and processes to your cloud world as well. Financial control we discussed. Actually, you have to really create budgets. You have to really create budgets unit wise. You have to create budgets department wise, and then of course you have to also create controls in terms of giving alerts, triggers, and so on and so forth. So they really know where they are vis-a-vis their budgets. Actually, that's something which is very important. So you could also do it basically with multiple controls. So somebody could ask for a particular machine and will have to probably take approval from the supervisor and so on and so forth. But whole financial control, management, and alert and triggering is very, very important from governance perspective. Another important point will be on key management and encryption. The bottom line in that will be that a cloud provider will have an encrypted data, but should not have an encryption key actually. Okay, that's an important point. You could leverage a tool to own the security keys and credentials. So they are management systems which could provide part of it actually, and we have to look for the systems, the management systems like NStratus and all, which are offering some parts of this. So you could look at leveraging that. Of course, logging and auditing again is very, very important, and you have to track activity by user by regular monitoring, so that you know that which system is accessed by whom actually at any point in time across your any of where your applications are. So it could be public cloud, private cloud. Of course, you have enough processes for your in-house infrastructure. Moving on to technology, which is a very, very critical feature. So what are the key considerations when you are selecting your hybrid cloud management system? So basically, how do you provision physical server? How do you provision virtual machines and public cloud services all through the same console? And that's the most important point from a management system perspective. How is configuration management carried out? How is the CMDB populated? How is the automation and orchestration of all the processes and workflow is taken care of? Capacity management, how does it happen? And how do you optimize the capacity? These are some of the important considerations that you have when you select your management system. So how we look at it is that it's a layered approach which you look at from a hybrid cloud management. So you have basically at the bottom you have traditional infrastructure, public cloud, private cloud, and then you have 6 layers, that is provisioning, resource management, application infrastructure monitoring and management, automation, orchestration, and service management. So what it does actually, that you look at which all layers in this are very important for your organization, for your businesses, and then you build it accordingly, whether it's one tool with a one overall management system or with a multiple tools which are being stitched together. So again, a little bit talking about in more detail, self-service based provisioning portal is important. So what happens is your users could be basically requesting, and the resources will be provisioned for them across again physical, virtual, as well as cloud providers. Another important point to note in that is that if you see, and I always bring this whole consumer businesses in that, so you just think about how your travel booking was done 5 years back or 10 years back. So you had a travel agent whom you called. He called your airlines in turn, checked which are the airlines available, what are all the prices were same. He comes back to you, tells you, then you confirm to him, pay him the money, he books the ticket, gives you a paper ticket, handwritten, which you go to the airline's counter in the boarding lounge, you get a boarding pass, and then you board the flight. What happens today actually? It's completely self-service driven, completely automated, and very secure. So today you do everything yourself actually, and that's how enterprise computing power also will be given actually, and that's again the consumerization actually of IT. Coming back to the same point, that's where self-service becomes very important, because when your users are asking for computing power, they should be able to get it as they want it from whichever source they want it actually. Of course, how do you create templates and profiles for that? So cloud management system should aid in creating templates and profiles, again based on department, based on units, based on what budget you have, so on and so forth. Monitoring again is very important, the proactive monitoring. It should again basically the way I look at monitoring. So if you look at monitoring in traditional infrastructure, the analogy will be that probably you are managing 100 adults sitting in one room in traditional infrastructure management, okay, preferably of the same gender. Today what you are doing in virtual world, in cloud world, you are probably managing thousands of children who are running inside a park actually, and the only way you can manage them is by automation. So everything which you are doing basically you have to basically do you have to auto detection of the new virtual machines which have been created. You have to basically have agentless monitoring on that, and so on and so forth. You also have to make sure that all the data which is getting collected through that, you are doing full data collection, you are trending and analysis on that, because you have to feed it back to your businesses to make sure that not only systems are up, they are also basically working within their capacity, how much they are using. Other important point from monitoring automation perspective is that at the front end you have to make sure that all your users are getting what they want, okay, at any point in time. at the back end, you have to have your monitoring and automation have to ensure that whatever machines are not being used are being killed and destroyed actually repeatedly. So you have to also make sure that no capacity is wasted, all the capacity is properly utilized. That's the whole idea behind cloud, so that you have to make sure that if you take care of both these and front end and back end, your costs could again come down by 10 to 15%. Of course, automation, I will talk a little bit more in detail, but provisioning, resource management, even runbook automation could be done using a tool. Orchestration and service management layer, which will stitch all of these together, which is very important, and we talked about how ITIL processes should be redone for that. We already have raised the time limit, so some of the points from automation perspective, the provisioning, scaling automation, recovery, backup and application distribution are some areas which you could look at from an automation perspective. So any tool, any management system which you are selecting should be able to give you as much as possible automation pieces from these 5 requirements. So what are the finally key considerations for building a management system? As we discuss the layered structure, you identify which are the layers which are important for you. You identify the activities which will be important for your organization, and then of course finalize the tool, process, framework for this cloud management system. It could be an overall one cloud management system, or it could be a combination of different tools which could you stitch together and run it actually. Okay. The only important point in this that you have to look for, that your management system should be scalable, it should be customizable, and should be very easy to deploy. Other important point to look for is that you should be able to integrate it with your current systems. That's the most important thing. Otherwise, whatever investments you have currently made in your organization will probably go waste. So that's another thing which is very, very important from management system. I think we are coming to the last section of it. How do you maintain security? We talked a little bit about governance. So this is how your hybrid cloud security, the focus areas will look like. So governance, we talked about governance and risk management, portability, electronic discovery, data privacy, compliance and audit. Of course, inside you have cloud infrastructure operations, where a lot of your current security policies is implemented. You have to ensure that you do the same things with the cloud providers as much as possible. I mean, you understand that not all cloud providers will be willing to give you all that access that you need from security perspective, but you have to keep insisting on that as you go along. That's the most important point. But the whole the base underlying the base for this will be that the multi-tenancy has to be securely done. So what is happening that you are having a shared resource actually, which all of your units are using. That's what multi-tenancy is, and none of them should have access to what resources are being used the other providers actually. That's the most important point. Okay, and based on that you build each of your security policies. Of course, the monitoring and audit will be important. Some of that you have been doing regularly within your organization. So it could periodic vulnerability assessments, continuous monitoring and alerting is important. And of course, you do that along with the cloud infrastructure. So whatever policies like your access control, like your investigative support, what you are looking at, you also have to look at same thing from a cloud provider as well. And of course, it's very obvious you don't have access to each one of those things today. But as I was saying, as it matures, you will start getting access to each one of those things, and you should ask for it. Another important point when you are signing up like a public cloud provider, you should also understand this is a new area. It's a very nascent at very nascent stage. So a lot of consolidation will happen. So if your cloud provider will get acquired by somebody else, what happens to your data? So you have to have very strong policies and procedures written around that before you sign up a particular public cloud provider. So if you see all of these actually, so these are 6 key components. You have people, automation, management tools, security, processes and governance actually. There is an interplay of these 6 which will basically ensure that if you really orchestrate these 6 well, you will get to a stage where you can have a very robust hybrid cloud management system for yourself. And I will finish this with an ideal scenario. This probably all the people who are in cloud business will wish for this. So 2 aliens are talking and saying the earth was once populated by humans, and in 2012 they all moved to the cloud actually. So I'll be with that wish. Thank you. Thanks for your time. Any questions? Thank you. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Vaibhav, and a small token of appreciation from the Cloud Connect team.